Hello, good afternoon. Welcome once again to our leadership podcast series. This is the Leadership Garage brought to you by me, your host, Mercy Masila Chola. I'm the founder of Value Connect and also an executive program leader with the Maxwell Leadership Team. It's another exciting time. I will say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where it is that you are listening or watching us from. This afternoon, I am so excited because I am joined by one of my very good friends, Connie Anyika. How are you, Connie?
I'm well, Mercy, and thank you for having me in this Leadership Garage series. It's a privilege and an honor, and I thank you for inviting me to this session.
Welcome. We are excited to host you, and thank you for accepting our request for you to be our guest speaker today. Now, listeners and viewers, Connie is a woman who is phenomenal in all aspects. But I do not want to be the one to ruin the moment for us. And so I'm going to ask Connie to introduce herself in a short while. But let me just remind us what the Leadership Garage podcast series is all about. Why do we call it the garage? And as you might all be familiar, we do all take our vehicles occasionally to get a checkup, whether it is the oil check, whether it is lifting that bonnet and examining whether the battery, uh, oil, and everything else that goes in with a car. We do that so very often. We go up to fuel our cars. We go to wash our cars. Have you thought about you, the leader? Where do you stop to get checked? Where do you stop to fuel up? Where do you stop to get new ideas? Where do you stop to improve on your performance? And that is why we have the Leadership Garage podcast series, where we have amazing guests such as we have Connie today, who will be sharing with us some powerful nuggets on how we can improve on our leadership. So, Connie, why don't we begin by you introducing yourself to us?
Thank you so much, Marcy. So I look at myself and I'd like to share what I think. I am a lifelong learner. Learning has defined me in every aspect. I am also a fitness buff. You will find me running, hiking, and also doing extreme sports. I enjoy the thrill and the adrenaline. And the other thing that really defines me is a sense of purpose. I have looked at my life, the things that I do, I've always wanted it to have impact, but also accompanied by camaraderie and a good sense of humor. Yeah, so that is how I define myself, as well as a sister, a daughter, and a loving aunt.
Awesome. I love the lane that you have chosen. Sounds like it's a lane full of thrills, adventure, fun, and everything that goes on with that. So, when we come to our conversation on leadership and the analogy we have to that effect, what would you like to share with us?
Yeah, I thought a little bit about this, Marcy. And for me, I looked at Formula One racing. If you follow Formula One, you will see that during the race, there's always a pit stop. And it's not for granted, there is a reason why the pit stop is there. So the Formula One driver brings his skills, and then the pit stop is more about how do I look internally to reflect to ensure that I actually move forward, and then balanced off by what elements of growth do you need to continue adding to your own journey. So for me, that's how I see the analogy of a leader. It's a combination of developing the skills that you need in your everyday work, but also taking time to reflect to enable you to move forward, and then building your capabilities on a daily basis by growth, personal development, and also challenging your own perspectives.
Mhm. Wow, it's interesting that you bring in the Formula One story right here because I'm still learning what the rules are. My son introduced me to watching Formula One about 2 years ago. And for me, as a mother to a teenager, it was a way to stay connected to him so that we could have a common conversation. And one of the rules I have learned is that in any Formula One racing, at least one pit stop is mandatory. It doesn't matter how fast the driver can go, but it is mandatory. And I was doing that reflection. I think it is a good place to learn about some great leadership lessons. So the pit stop being mandatory, even in such a race, and you saying that we too, as leaders, need to pause to reflect. And during that pit stops, they don't just stop on their own, they have a team that they depend on and a team that supports them to upskill themselves and to even take that rest. So tell me, Connie, in your experience, in your journey as a leader, what kind of pit stops have you been intentional and deliberate on taking for yourself?
Yeah, this has been an interesting journey. And I started trying to figure out how am I a reflective leader in understanding myself in the situations that I am part of, my interactions with other people, and also how do I come up with creative ideas to move the business forward. And one of the things that I started incorporating in my daily schedule was journaling. So I started by being intentional. What am I thinking about early morning? And then what am I thinking about at the end of the day? And writing these things down. So that was my very first step in terms of how do I build in reflection as part of my own journey as a leader. And the reflection is really simple. It's trying to look back and understand the interactions that you've had during the day, the things that you have actually decided upon, the decisions you have made. What actually drove those decisions? What were you feeling in that moment? Why did you actually decide to go in that direction? And then coming up with a bit of sense making. Was that the right decision? Is there an area of improvement? So it can be as simple as that. How do you reflect at the end of the day? And it can also be a little bit more in terms of how do you reflect at the end of the week? So do you take your Saturday or Sunday and add an extra hour or 2 hours to really think through about these questions? Where are you going? How are you getting there? And are there additional things that you can actually add to enrich that experience? So I've found this quite enriching. And the reality is, Marcy, my reflections have helped me come up with ideas that I never would have thought of. Was I sitting in front of my laptop? Was I sitting in front of my computer? And I found that my reflections happen in a very natural way in the natural environment. So whether you're walking in Karura, whether you're in the kitchen cooking, whether you're walking in your neighborhood, whatever you choose, how do you build those moments of reflection and you're intentional about them and you write about them? And I think the hardest part for me was actually writing about them, because then I had to connect with what were the facts with respect to that specific situation? How did I feel? My emotions? What was happening to me? And then the sense making, which was the hypothesis. Why did I behave the way I did? And is there another hypothesis that I could have put forward that I had not thought about? So am I reverting back to my old mental models? And what are the new mental models that I have not thought about, which can help improve my creativity, my decision making, or my problem solving in that particular situation?
Wow. I like the way you break it down, Connie. I'm hearing you say the reflection begins with a thought process. You're thinking and you pause and you actually take a moment to journal. So you're writing down because you want to be keeping track or seeing what is this that your thoughts are reflecting. And then you examine your feelings depending on what that thought was about, what the action was about, what did it make you feel? And then you bring in a third attribute. of would you have made a different decision from the thoughts, from the reflection process? Would you have done it differently? And my question to you is, if you would have done it differently, what steps do you take to make that amendment? I think it's obvious. If you would have done it the same way, that's fine. I mean, it's already done. But what do you do when you realize that maybe a different decision would have brought you a much more desirable result? How do you handle that as a leader?
Yeah, and that's where the learning actually starts. A lot of people ask themselves, how do I learn when I'm already an expert? And these moments of reflection reveal to you gaps that then, if you set your ego aside, you actually say, aha, this is the area where I have learned something. And that learning means that I must take action to ensure that I do it very differently. And it's also an opportunity for you to ask yourself, do I have what it takes for me to do it differently? Or do I need to ask for help for me to actually transition and make that path towards what I need to do? So for me, one of the things that I have always done is move my ego aside, where you actually acknowledge, I don't have the answer for this particular challenge or problem. And when I search myself, I realize there's somebody else who has done this. They understand this challenge better. Why don't I have a conversation with them to help me navigate this particular challenge or problem that I'm trying to resolve? So it's a combination of where do you find the information that you're searching for? And this is where reading also comes in. The more you read, the better empowered you are, because it gives you a lot of information, wealth of information that is not necessarily available to you. And it also helps you with the ideas and also who you need to reach out to. So conversations I've had with different people have refined and helped me solve problems better, ego aside. And the more you ask for help, the better, because at the end of the day, you're solving the problem that is before you. And the best thing that can happen is acknowledge how you've been able to solve that, and people will be more willing to help you navigate the challenges. And in the same way, you also offer your expertise. You know, it's a give and take relationship. So the more conversations you have, the more you're able to exchange with other people to be able to solve the challenges that you're currently facing. So for me, the reflection is actually a platform for learning. You cannot learn without actually reflecting, because then you don't know what you're learning. You will be moving in a very confused manner, because what exactly are you trying to address if you've not had a chance to sense check and reflect on your experience on a day-to-day perspective, on a monthly perspective, quarterly, and also yearly perspective.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hear quite a few things coming through right there, Connie, and allow me to just connect the dots for our audience. One, I'm hearing that the journey of reflection requires asking questions. You're asking yourself questions, you're being authentic in asking those questions, and you're providing authentic answers. John Maxwell has written a book called Great Leaders Ask Great Questions. And the questions is not just yourself, it's also to the team and to those around you. And when you're asking the questions, is then the next step needing to listen, because the people closest to the problem normally know what needs to be done, and sometimes even how it needs to be done. And so here we are demystifying the myth that as a leader, you need to know everything. There's no leader that knows everything. And there's a lot that we can learn from those around us. And then thirdly, Connie, from what you've just shared, I hear you saying to navigate your path and forge the way ahead, from time to time as a leader, you do need a co-driver. And a co-driver means you're not always going to be in the driver's seat. You will have someone either co-driving you when you are the driver, and sometimes you may need to be the co-driver to somebody else in the team. And so that's where the give and take comes in, and acknowledging that sometimes if you are very deliberate, very intentional to take that reflective moment, that you will be able to carry on with a co-driver. So Connie, hello, Connie?
I can hear you. I had
Oh,
lost you
good.
for 1 second, but you're right there.
Okay, great. I thought I had lost you too, but we're back again. Sometimes we live with these technical challenges, and we have to ride them through. So, what would you basically advise? You have mentioned daily reflections, weekly reflections, monthly into quarterly, and so forth. So, just to sum up our conversation today, if I was to ask you to just give our audience 3 straight tips, you've sort of like mentioned them along the way, but can we sum them up in a nice contextual way that somebody listening to us today will say, okay, I think I need to take on reflection as part of the things I do for myself as a leader? How can you sum up to them the 3 or 4 things that they need to do in order to have a successful time of reflection?
Yeah, maybe I share a quote, Marcy, because it's
Yes,
one of the
do.
quotes that has guided me in this journey. And it's actually by Margaret Wheatley. And she says, without reflection, we go on creating unintended consequences. So we repeat the same mistakes, failing to achieve the goals that we set for ourselves. And it's only by reflection that we navigate and move past those unintended consequences.
Thank you very much. Without reflection, we stand a chance of repeating the same mistakes or having the same consequences. You remind me of a story about Abraham Lincoln when he was fighting the Civil War, the American Civil War, that he used to take time out, time to reflect. And for him, you told us about some of us do it through walking in nature while cooking or doing a sport we love. For Abraham Lincoln, he loved to go to the theater. And while he was doing his reflections, is when he came up with the best ideas or strategies about how to win the war. And you have also shared the same thing, that that's when you get your most creative solutions or ideas that you would not ordinarily get sitting in front of a computer. So thank you very much, Connie, for sharing with us those attributes that every leader needs to incorporate in their daily life so that they can be successful in moving themselves forward and their team subsequently. Now, Connie, in our Leadership Garage podcast, we'd love to know and hear from our guests about their favorite car, model, and why. So this is your turn to share with us, what is your favorite car, model, and why?
Okay, so my favorite car at the moment is Toyota. And the reason for this is I feel that Toyota have been at the forefront of sustainability, more from connecting with my purpose in how we as a whole move away from fossil fuels, petrol, etc. I'm really waiting to see how the cars in general transition into cars that we are happy with from a planet perspective. But Toyota for me has been my go-to car, especially living in Africa. It's reliable, parts are available, and I don't have to worry about it. So I've been very practical around the choice of car, moving from point A to B. If I would, Marcy, I would walk and cycle everywhere if possible. But I'm really waiting to see how the whole transition to sustainable cars will happen.
Thank you very much, Connie. Right there, even with your car, showing us the connection there. Because as leaders, we want to be practical. And you've shared with us a practical tip of adapting reflection into our daily life. And if we do that, then we have the likelihood of running for longer. We're not going to have a burnout. We're not going to run out of gas. And that is what will help us to create a legacy, to leave behind something that people can look for, which I would say, as you said in the car scenario, the sustainability that we're looking to make our planet better. And no doubt, we do require such leaders who are able to provide a change and bring a difference in the communities, in the organizations they serve, so that we can have a better world and a better society. Any parting shots, Connie, before we wrap up?
Yeah, your sense of purpose is the most important thing. Once you know that, that's your North Star. And as a leader, you can only do better by understanding yourself before you create greatness or impact for others.
Mm-hmm. I love that quote on having purpose and having it as your North Star. And it reminds me of a quote that one of my mentors says that the wrong definition can lead to the wrong destination. And so identifying your purpose defines you as a person, where you're going, and hence you're able to actually know what destination you're heading to. They say if you do not know where you're going, you will not know if you're lost. So we definitely want to know where we're going and to sustain that. So thank you very much,
Absolutely.
Connie. We appreciate you. It has been an honor to host you this afternoon, and we will definitely continue to reflect on what you have given us and use it to sharpen ourselves. So there you have it, listeners and our viewers. If you're watching us on YouTube, we come to the end of another episode of the Leadership Garage podcast series, and we do look forward to having you joining us again at the next episode. For now, we say bye-bye. My name is Masi Masila Chola, your host, and see you next time. Goodbye.